Hi friends, welcome to ISN College Connect YouTube channel. In this videos, we are going to discuss about one-to-one in bidirectional way. So in previous videos, we discussed about one-to-one unidirectional way. So this video is continuation of the previous videos. In case if you not watch this video, please watch that videos and then come back. So one-to-one unidirectional videos. Okay, so in these videos, we are going to discuss this one-to-one bidirectional. Let's see what is a one-to-one bidirectional way. So previously we discussed unidirectional, right? Okay, so unidirectional means what? The parent table know the relationship to the child table, but the child table don't know the relationship to the which table is get connected, right? Okay, so that is what unidirectional is. But now what we are going to do? So we are going to see the bidirectional. Okay, so here what is the bidirectional means? Okay, so here the child class know the relationship. The child class know the relationship. That is what bidirectional. Okay, so let's see how to write it. In previously in unidirectional, we are having the parent class. In the parent class, we are having this annotation which is called as at one-to-one and cascade fetch optional false. Okay, so everything I explained on the previous video, you can watch it. Okay, so what is join column and everything? We are going to have the same setup on the parent table. What the new setup on the child table is same thing in the child table, that is reference table. So what we are going to do? Okay, so here we are going to use same at one-to-one annotation, one-to-one. Okay, so here we are going to have the extra one more keyword is mapped by. Okay, so we are going to use keyword which is called as mapped by, and then we are going to use the keyword. The next keyword is called fetch. Okay, so here we are going to mention the fetch type. What's the fetch type is? Okay, so here we are going to mention the fetch type is what? Lazy. Okay, so why we are mentioning the lazy over here means, okay, so here, so when we are retrieving the student academic record, so when it is required at the time only we need to retrieve the parent class details. So that only we are mentioning the lazy over here. And then mapped by. Okay, so here in this mapped by, we need to give the object of this particular class. Okay, so on here. Okay, so in the parent class, we mentioned the child class name, right? So that child class reference, we are going to give it over here. Okay, student academic. Okay, so rest of the things are common. Okay, so this mapped by, we need to extra thing, we need to add it over here. Okay, so fetch by is optional, but we need to mention it here. Okay, so fetch type is dot lazy. Okay, so here this only these lines we are going to add it in the child class. Under this annotations, we need to mention the parent class name, student info. Okay, so that we need to mention, right? In the parent class, we mention the child class name, right? In the child class name, we need to mention the parent class name. Okay, so student info, student info. So here in the bidirectional way, okay, so child class know the relationship to the parent class, okay, and then parent class know the relationship to the child class. That is what the bidirectional is. Okay, so let's move to the implementation part. Okay, so here I'm going to use the same coding which I used for the bidirectional. Okay, so only thing is I'm just going to add one more annotations under this child class, that is the student academic record. Okay, so what I need to do, I'm just going to remove all the other things. Okay, so getter and setter everything. Okay, so later after adding this annotations, then we can create it. So we need to use one-to-one. Okay, so one-to-one, and then we are going to be mention that type. Okay, so here we are going to use mapped by. Okay, so here why we are using the mapped by? It's a reference table. In the reference table we need to use mapped by. So in the mapped by, so we need to mention the object name which we created in the parent class for this particular table, that is a star, right? Okay, so here I'm going to be mention the mapped by star. Okay, so then I'm just going to be mention the fetch type. Okay, so here I'm just going to be mention the fetch type which is going to be what? Lazy. Okay, so here, so where it is referring, the star is the where it is referring, where we are having the star object. Okay, so we are having the star object on which class? Student info classes, student info classes. So here we are going to mention the class name over here. Okay, so student info classes, we having star, right? Okay, so here we are mentioning these things on the parent class. sorry, in the child class. Okay, so in the child class we are going to mention student info. Here I am going to refer the SI. This is the object for the student info. Okay, so here I'm going to put the private. Okay, that's it. We include this two things. One is fetch by, another one is going to be mapped by. Okay, so here we are going to create a constructor, getter, setter, all those things now. Okay, so constructor, I'm going to create an empty constructor, and then I'm just going to create a constructor with argument, generate constructor with arguments, all the constructor with arguments. Then I'm just going to create a getter and setter, generate getter and setter for all this. Done. Okay, so now you see we are done this getter and setter, then two strings. That's it. We done. Okay, so now you see we are going to write the services class. In the services class, what I'm going to do? Okay, so here I'm just going to create the separate services class. Okay, so that is uh, class name which is called as a student academic services. Student academic services. Okay, so here I'm going to annotate this class with at service annotation. Okay, so here I'm just going to inject the repository for the student academic. Okay, student academic, we are having the separate repositories which is called as student academic record, right? Okay, so now you see, I'm just going to move to the services class. I'm just going to inject the repository, student academic records. Okay, so here, sorry, student academic repo, right? Okay, so repository. Okay, so student academic repo. So I'm just going to annotate this class with which annotation? At ID annotation, sorry, at auto add annotation. Okay, so here we are going to write the method. So this method, what it is going to do, I'm just going to pass the particular student academic ID. Okay, so here you see I'm having student academic ID, right? Okay, so academic data. So student academic record. I'm just going to pass the ID name. Okay, so based upon that ID name, it's going to be written the student who is going to be have the ID on that particular table. Okay, so if I'm going to pass the ID of student academic record 1 means, okay, so here you see we are having student data whose foreign key is 1. That data is going to be pulled. Okay, let's see how to write the code for it. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass academic record ID. Okay, so it's going to be written the students those having the particular academic record ID. Okay, so I'm just going to return that data, so that I'm just going to use public. Okay, so it need to return which type. It is going to be written the name of the particular students, their name. Okay, so their department, and then all other things. Okay, so here I'm going to write the return type is what? Student info. Okay, so here I'm just going to be write student info. Return type is what? Student info. Here I'm going to get student details by academic records, right? Okay, so here I'm just don't want to write like this much lengthy detail. Instead of details, I'm just going to data by academic records. Okay, so here inside this, I'm just going to pass the values. Okay, long, okay, long, long ID. Okay, so I'm just going to pass the ID. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, so first I'm going to call the repository student academic repo dot find by ID. Okay, so find by ID. Inside this, I'm just going to be pass the values. Okay, so ID, I'm just going to pass the ID values dot or else null. Okay, so in case if it is not found, it need to return the null values. Okay, so here, so what type of data it is? Find by ID is going to be written. The find by ID is going to be written the data. So that is that is going to refer the academic record, right? Academic record it is going to be written. Okay, so that is if you are going to give one means it's going to be written the academic record who is matching the ID is going to be one. Okay, so here what type of data is going to be written? Academic record, right? Okay, so here I'm going to capture it. Student academic record. Okay, so student academic record, S A R. SAP. Okay, so here is the is going to be written as student academic record. This student academic record is holding ID 10th mark, 12th marks, and then student info details also, right? Okay, so that here I'm going to pull the student academic record information. So what I'm going to do, so student academic records is holding both the student academic record and student info. So I'm just going to give SI student is info SI equal to. Okay, so it's going to hold both the academic record as well as the student info. Who is holding SAR? So SAR dot, okay, so get and then SI. Okay, so get SI is nothing but student info object. Okay, so why it is giving the SI means here is the in the student academic record, what is the object? It is the SI. In case if you want, I can change it. Instead of this, I'm just going to use a student info. I'm just saving it here. You see, instead of this, I'm just going to use SAR dot get. So sorry, I need to save it. Student info SI equal to SAR dot, sorry, it's keep on telling SI. Why? Okay, okay. So student academic student. Okay, so here the getter setter, right? Okay, so here we are having the getter setter. So we need to remove it. Okay. So I'm just going to create a new constructor. Empty constructor is already there. Constructor with the argument. Then getter and setter. Because of we changed the variable name, we need to write it all this once again. Getter and setter. And then toString. Generate toString. That's it. Okay, so if you go there, okay, so if you're going to type get saw dot get student info. Okay, so it's going to be written the entire data. Okay, so now the essay is holding the data, right? Okay, so I'm just going to return essay. Okay, so let's I explain what I written over here. Okay, so listen. Okay, so here we are return auto add annotation. Okay, to because why we are what entity we are dealing, we are dealing with the student academic. Okay, so for that we are going to use student academic repo. Okay, so then it will be going to auto annotated with auto add annotation. And then here we are returning the method. What this method is going to do is, so when the user is going to give the ID of the particular academic record, okay, so it is going to be return the relevant data which is there in the student info table. Okay, so that what we are going to do is we are going to use the repository name student academic report dot find by id. Inside this we are going to pass the id or else we are going to pass null. Okay, so what this values is going to return, it is going to be return the entire students details. Okay, so will contains both academic as well as a student info. We are going to store the data in the SAR. Okay, so here inside this SAR, we are having the get student info, right? Okay, so we are going to use SAR.get info method is going to return the complete student info information. Then we are going to return it. Okay, so here we are going to annotate it with our transaction annotation. What is the use of our transaction annotation means? Okay, so here it is going to perform the or whatever the operations we mentioned inside this particular method is going to be executed completely or partial, so completely. In case the execution is going to be done partially, when this particular execution is done and other execution is not done means, so it is going to be rollback. Okay, so here what the that is the main purpose of using the transaction notation. Okay, so here we're having the 5 database operations coding which we written inside this. Only 3 is executed, remaining 2 is get failed means, so it is going to be rolled back to the previous. Okay, all the 3 successful operation is going to be rolled back to the previous stage. Okay, so when two failures happen. Okay, so whether all the 5 transaction is going to be done successfully means it is going to be get executed. Those data is going to be get saved on the database. In case any two is getting failed, it is rolled back, okay, to the previous stage. Okay, so now what we are going to do? So now we are going to make a call to this particular method. What is the method name? Get student data by academic records. We are going to make a call to this particular method. So for that, I'm just going to write the separate controller, that is academic controller. Okay, so here this is going to be annotated with at request mapping. Okay, so here the endpoint is academic, and then I'm just going to annotate this class with at rest controller at rest controller. Here inside this, I'm just going to injecting the services class for the academic. Okay, so here I'm just going to use a this time I'm going to use a field type. Okay, so we can use whether field type, or we can go with this constructor or getter setter. Here for the changes, I'm going to give field type in the auto add annotation. Okay, so here we are going to write academic, sorry, so services class name. What is the services class name for this? So it is the services class name is student academic services. Okay, so here private student academic services. So I'm just going to give student academic services. Here this one is going to be annotated with at auto add annotation. Auto void. Okay, so here what we are going to do, we are going to write one endpoint. Okay, so this endpoint, what it is going to do, it is going to be return the student info which is going to be associated with this particular academic record. Okay, so that I am just going to use a student info. Okay, student info, uh, get student info by academic records. Okay, so record. Okay, so here inside this, I'm just going to pass the values. Okay, so that I'm just going to use at get mapping. Okay, so then I'm just going to put the endpoint for this slash get student info slash id. Okay, so here inside this, I'm just going to pass the id name. Here, I'm just going to read the ID. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the at path variable annotation. Inside this, it is going to be integer, right? Okay, long. Okay, so that I'm going to use ID. ID is the name which we use unknown here, right? Okay, so I need to pass the ID to the services class where we return the logics, right? Okay, so to inject the services class, we having is student academic services here. It is going to be return student info, right? So that I'm going to write return. Okay, so then I'm just going to call this student services. Inside this, I'm just going to call this get student data by academic records. Here I'm going to pass the values ID. That's it. We done. Okay, so now we are going to save this code and then we are going to run it now. To make a call to this, we need to pass the academic. So here, what is the endpoint? Academic. Sorry, endpoint is academic. Okay, so to make a call to this controller, we need to use the academic, and then to make a call to this method, we need to use get student info, and then we are going to pass the ID. Okay, so if you are going to pass the ID, you need to return the details. Okay, so here you see why we are using like this means, okay, so we are getting this because we are regression calling is happening. Okay, to avoid this, what we need to do, we need to use at JSON ignore. Okay, so we need to use JSON ignore. Okay, so here in this particular entity, to avoid regression calling, we are going to use at JSON ignore. Okay, so now you see, I'm just stop saving. Okay, now you see this data is recursive calling. Okay, so it's happened. Okay, so it is calling, keep on calling this back to back references. So now I'm just using the JSON ignore. Okay, so I'm just going to run this code. Okay, now you see we are getting only this particular data. Got it clear? Okay, so hope you understand what is unidirectional and bidirectional way of one-to-one. Okay, so here also we use one more annotation, JSON ignore. Why we are using JSON ignore? To avoid recursive calling. Okay, to avoid recursive calling, in the ending point, we need to use JSON ignore. Okay, so hopefully you understand this concepts of one-to-one bidirectional. Okay, so I'm just going to push this code on my GitHub account. So this GitHub account, you will be find it on this description link. Thank you. If you like this video, please share this video with your friends. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. So, thank you.